In this video, we're going to see how to read a string from a file, parse it, and then turn it into an object in Java. If you've been following along with my previous videos on strings and on objects, it might feel like we're going in a couple different directions. One talking about what objects are and using constructors, and the other talking about strings and string operations. This video is going to pull all of that together. First of all, I need a file. So I'm going to say new, and then I'm going to say other at the very root of my project. Under other, I'm simply going to choose empty file, and I'm going to call this inventory.txt. Something like that is just fine. Oops, sorry, no, that's not what I want, not yet. One more, other, sorry, and empty file, there we go. And now we'll say inventory.txt. Okay, and I'll choose finish. Okay, in this inventory.txt, I'm going to put some parameters down that describe a car. So I might start with the odometer. We'll say 36,000 or 26,000 is fine. Then the miles per gallon, maybe we'll say it's an efficient car. We'll say 30 miles per gallon. And then gallons of gas, we'll say 9. We could leave it at that. That's fine. And then I'm going to choose save. Notice that these are three values that are separated by a comma. Okay. Now, what am I going to do with that? Well, let me step back and describe our existing program a little bit. We have a class called vehicle, which is a noun. This noun describes a vehicle by gallons of gas, miles per gallon, and odometer. We have another class, which is a user interface class called driver. This is where we're prompting the user for details, and those details we're going to use to populate an object of type vehicle. Now, early on in programming, a lot of times instructors will not talk about objects first, they'll save them for later. I much prefer talking about objects first or classes first, and here's why. You see, the driver and vehicle do two different things. Vehicle is a noun. Driver is essentially a user interface. In Java, we want to keep user interface separate from everything else, and the reason is user interface might vary. Now, when I first started teaching Java back around 2000, 2001, this was a hard concept to grasp, but it was a very forward-looking concept, and it's one that we see quite a bit today. And why is that? Well, what's a computer? Your mobile phone, a self-checkout, a laptop, a web page. All of these are different ways that we can interact with the program. And a lot of times the logic under the covers is very complex, and we don't want to have to rewrite it for every different user interface that we have. So driver is an interactive user interface where we're prompting the user for some information. Additionally, we can make a different kind of user interface that's going across this inventory file, opening up that inventory file, and then running a vehicle based on what's in that inventory file. So essentially a different way to get input into our program, and it's important to keep this different way of getting input unique. So in vehicles, I'm going to right-click and choose New Java Class, and this is going to be my class that's reading from the file, so we'll call it Inventory Reader. Something like that's fine, and then Finish. Now, I want to be able to run this inventory reader without having to start the driver program here. So what I'm going to do is use a public static void main method. Remember, that's the magic method where our program starts. So public static void main, PSVM, and then tab, and it will fill in the details for me. Now what I can do is I can access the file that I've created. So I'm going to say file, inventory file, equals new file. And since I put that at the root of the project, I'm just going to say inventory.txt. Now wait a minute, what's file? Well, file is a Java class that we can use to reference a file on the file system. Now, by default, when I type it in, it says, wait, I don't understand. What is file? I need to tell the Java compiler where to find this class. So Alt-Enter will help me out, and it says add import for java.io.file. Java.io is what we call a package, so it's telling us the address where this file class lives. And I choose that, and the red line goes away. Okay, so I'll put a comment here that just says find the file with the vehicle data. Next, we're going to use something called scanner. Inventory scanner equals new scanner. Now, scanner is a class that knows how to open a file and read from it. But once again, it doesn't know where to find this scanner. So Alt-Enter, and it says add import for java.util.Scanner, and I'll say yes, that's the one that I want to use. Okay, it's giving me trouble here because it says no constructor found. So what do we do in that case? I'm going to go out to my browser, and I'm going to say java.util.Scanner, and we're going to see if we can find some documentation on this. Okay, here it is. You might remember a couple of videos ago we were talking about constructors and overloaded constructors. And as I said, this video is going to put everything together. Take a look at this. These are all the different constructors that Scanner will take. And sure enough, one of them will take a file. You see how that parameter is a file. These are both classes, they're not primitives. These are both intelligent classes. So I'm going to take my inventory file, and I'm going to pass that into the scanner constructor. Okay, use a scanner that will read from the file. Okay, now still have a red line. I'm going to Alt-Enter, and we have a little problem here. Something could go wrong here, and it wants us to decide how we're going to handle it. I'm going to say surround block with try catch. We don't know what an exception is yet, so I don't want to explain too much and confuse things, but let me just say this. What will happen is, I'll put this in the comment, we go here if something went wrong. And if we're here, then we need to decide how do we handle something going wrong. We don't want to just continue because that will likely crash our program and frustrate our user. Okay, now let's read a line from the file. That's very easy to do with the scanner. We say inventory scanner. Note that's my variable name up here on line 26. And then we'll say next line. And that simply returns the next line that it reads to us. But here again, it's returning a value. We need to store that in a variable. Okay, assign return value to new variable. We'll keep it there at next line. Okay, now be honest with you. At this point, it really pays to debug. Let's make sure we're getting what we want. I'll go ahead and put in a system out print line here just to verify we're getting some data. But really, the best thing to do is to debug. To debug, I double-click on line 23. I get the Pepto-Bismol line. And then I'm going to save, because I see I have, okay, there we go. And then I'm going to right-click on this inventory reader and choose Debug File. Let's make sure we're getting what we expect. The Pepto-Bismol line turns green, and that means we can step through the program one line at a time. So step over is F8. Okay, F8 again. Uh-oh, got a problem. It says file not found. Okay, well, okay, maybe I need to give it a more direct path. So I'm glad I debugged. So I'm going to go ahead and choose F8 and tell the debugger to just finish up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this inventory.txt and choose properties, and I'm going to choose its full path. Okay, kind of a long path, but I'm going to Control-C, and then instead of new file inventory.txt, I'm going to put in the full path that I just copied from up above. Okay, this one's going to be a little bit long-winded though, because you see that inventory file is buried kind of deep. One other thing is that the slash that you see there is Windows specific, so we need to use our string concatenation operator or our overridden plus operator to use a more generic separator. So what I can do is say C, and then I can say plus File.separator. And what that will do is it will take a look at the underlying file system and put in the appropriate separator character. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to save this to a string called file location. And it's going to take a little bit of time to do this, so I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to replace each of these slashes with the file.separator with the file.separator instead of the slash itself. Just a moment as I pause the video. And now with the magic of pausing the video, you see that I've replaced each of those slashes, that's the slash above the enter key on the American keyboard, I've replaced each of those slashes with file.separator. That's very important. Actually, you know what? I better take off the C as well, shouldn't I? Okay, so the C is gone, and you see it's using this file separator and a whole bunch of overloaded pluses. We really should use the string builder for this, but I kind of want to show it in one line, so we'll just do it like so. Nonetheless, it's very important to use file.separator and to remove the C. And why is that? Well, with file.separator, I can now run this on Linux or on a Mac, and it's still going to work. If I kept that Windows /n and the Windows C:, we would be removing one of the best parts of Java, and that is its platform independence. As soon as you do something that is specific to Windows or Mac or Linux and you can't use it on another operating system, you're severely limiting what Java can do. So this is a better way to do it. Try very hard to avoid doing anything operating system specific. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and debug. Let's make sure at the very least that we can read in this file. So I click on Inventory Reader and I choose Debug. And remember, that Pepto-Bismol colored line turns green, which means the program is now waiting for me to give it permission to continue. So I'm going to choose F8, and it's going to execute the line 25, and now it's on line 28. I'm going to choose F8. It's going to execute the line 28, and it's going to read in this file. It's going to access the file at least. Now, line 31, I choose F8. It's going to read a line from the file, and let's take a look. Do you see next line here? You see this variable here, and you see the values, the odometer, miles per gallon, gallons of gas. So you see at this point, using file separator, the file class, the scanner class, and the next line class, we're able to read in this file, and we're able to read one line at a time. That's very good. Okay, next thing we want to do is we want to parse this line, and we want to show how we can populate a vehicle with this line, and then we'll make the vehicle run a certain distance. In this video, I'm going to show a little shortcut. I'm going to show how we can use something called split. So we can use the index of that we saw in a previous video. That will work just fine for us if we want, and I'll show that in another video as well. But in this video, I'm going to show how we can do it a short way with something called split. So I'll put in a comment that says, well, let me go ahead and tell the debugger to go ahead and finish. Everything worked fine, so I'm happy with that. So I'll say split the file into parts. Okay, next line, dot split. What split will do is it will take some kind of delimiter, which in our case is a comma, and it will split that string from our file into 3 separate strings. Odometer, the miles per gallon, and gallons of gas. Let's remember in that order: odometer, miles per gallon, gallons of gas. So it's going to automatically look for commas and change this from 1 string into 3 strings. Now we need a special variable to handle this, and that's called a string array. A string array is a construction that will allow us to hold multiple strings, kind of like an apartment building. So you have multiple people living in an apartment building. Let's say that we're going to split this into 3 strings. Each string is going to be on a different floor. So Alt-Enter, assign to new variable, and we'll say vehicle components equals next line dot split, like so, with a comma. Okay. Now let's say get the components of our vehicle. Okay, remember we're cutting it up into floors. We're doing it the European style though, where the first floor is actually the 0 floor. Ironically, I'm in Europe at the moment, and that's usually the very first floor is 0, the second floor is 1, the third floor is 2. I always have to subtract 1 when I tell someone what floor I'm on. So nonetheless, this is going to be the 0 floor, our odometer reading, the 1 floor, and then the 2 floor. Okay, now it is going to be string data type, so we are going to need to convert this to the respective data types before we push it into a vehicle. But nonetheless, okay, let's do this. Vehicle components. Now, how do we access the ground floor? We use square brackets, and then we put the floor number in the square brackets. Okay, so I'll say string odometer equals vehicle components 0. String, I knew I'd forget. It was miles per gallon. And let's call it str odometer, and str miles per gallon equals vehicle components. And remember, now we're going to the first floor. String str gallons of gas equals vehicle components, and then we're going to go to the second floor. Now, let's create a vehicle. Okay, so vehicle, and we'll say inventory vehicle, as opposed to my vehicle or your vehicle, as we've seen in previous videos, equals new vehicle. Remember that constructor call we've seen before. Okay, so we're simply calling a constructor. And now I'm going to say inventory vehicle dot set gallons of gas. Oh, look at that. Well, gallons of gas is a double, isn't it? Okay, so I think I have something to do before I get to this part. Let's convert our gallons of gas to a double. So we'll say double dBl gallons of gas equals double dot parse double, and then we'll say str gallons of gas. I went over this part in a previous video, converting from a string to a double, so hopefully that's not news for you. Okay, now we can say inventory vehicle dot set gallons of gas dBl gallons of gas. Repeat this for the other lines as well. So let's see, miles per gallon is an int, so I'll say int miles per gallon. A note there, remember we cannot declare two different variables with the same name. Declaring a variable, remember what that is, we have a name and a type. So because I'm making a different variable here of a different data type, I have to name it something slightly different, which is why I called it str miles per gallon here and int miles per gallon here. That is a common mistake I see in intro programming, where somebody will try to declare a variable a second time with a different data type. That simply won't work. Make sure that your variable names are unique if you're declaring a new variable. Okay. Also, don't forget that assignment is different from initialization, but that's a whole other story. So int miles per gallon equals integer dot parse int. Okay. str miles per gallon. Okay. Terminate with a semicolon. Inventory vehicle dot set miles per gallon. Okay, int miles per gallon, and we're good. Last one then is odometer. So we'll say int odometer equals integer dot parse int str odometer, and then inventory vehicle dot set odometer int odometer, and terminate with a semicolon. Now let's print the state of the vehicle, SOUT, and we'll say vehicle, and we'll simply say plus inventory vehicle dot toString. Remember, that's a method we made earlier that prints out the value of all the attributes of the vehicle. And then we'll say move the vehicle. So we'll say inventory vehicle dot go, and we'll say 120, maybe 120 miles. Okay, and then let's print the final state after we've moved it. So we'll print it one more time. We'll say vehicle after move, and we'll say vehicle before move. Okay, let's save, and let's run this and see how it looks. Okay, so before the move, we had 9 gallons of gas and 26,000 miles on the odometer. How does that look? 9 gallons of gas, 26,000 miles on the odometer. After moving 120 miles, we have 5 gallons of gas and 26,120 miles on the odometer. The odometer reading makes sense, but let's see, 120 divided by 30 is 4. Sure enough, 9 minus 4 gives us 5. So what we've done in this video then is we've made a new way of interacting with our vehicle separate from driver. Brand new way to do that, but you see we've gotten to reuse all of that logic that we already wrote in vehicle. Just like how you can do a click and collect with your mobile phone, where maybe you see something in a store you want and you reserve it, then you go to the store and pick it up. Or you can buy it over the web, pick it up in the store, or you can go to the store and just buy it the old school way. 3 different ways you can interact with the same software with the same logic. That's why this object-oriented approach is very important. Now, a few things I should do. I really don't like having all this stuff in the main method, and I want to refactor that into a separate method. Also, I want to take a look at this in the debugger, but this video is getting a little bit long, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the video now. I'm going to do that refactoring and debugging in the next video. I'll see you then.